Hey folks, see if you've ever had this problem. You're trying to eat a little healthier, but you're in the grocery store aisle, you're looking at packaging, nutrition labels, and they're so confusing, you don't know what's good for you and what's not. Well, this is why I love Thrive Market, my go-to online grocery store for getting all of my healthy essentials delivered, and I don't even have to leave my couch. Finding better options for the whole family is easy with Thrive Market's Healthy Swap Scanner. Just scan a product and it instantly recommends healthier swaps. This is how my wife and I found our new favorite snack, IQ bars. Sometimes I eat one in the morning with my coffee, sometimes just later on in between meals. They also have so many on-site filters that make it simple to shop by the needs of everyone in the family. Maybe you have someone who needs gluten-free food, somebody that has a peanut allergy. Well, no more scouring ingredient labels when you can just filter it all on Thrive Market. My wife and I often use the high protein filter to stock up on things like Sieti chips. Ready to make the switch? Go to thrivemarket.com/TCAT for 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/TCATT. thrivemarket.com/TCAT. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 366 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
And we were talking on Patreon, which we do before we start this recording, that, I was fixing a toilet, the flushing mechanism and stuff, and I hurt my back.
Okay.
And I've been down for like 4 days.
Man, it's rough getting old.
It is.
Yeah. And you're only 29.
I know. Time is passing quickly, and I should be able to fix a toilet without being down on my back for, 4 or 5 days at a time. But hey, it is what it is, man.
That's why I just believe that the old toilets outside.
Latrine, you just dig a hole, don't you?
Just dig a hole and just put a shed over top of it and just go out there.
Shitter's full.
That's right.
Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Mel from Australia.
What's going on, Mel? Good day.
Michelle Wild Win.
Ah, Michelle. Hi.
Tiffany.
Hey, Tiffany.
Laura K 428.
Well, thank you, Laura K.
Marie Bezenson. Scott O.
Hey, Scott.
Julie Moore.
What's going on, Julie?
One of your favorite actresses.
Oh, yeah.
Katie O'Donnell jumped out to our highest level.
Well, thanks, Katie.
DH.
What's up, designated hitter?
Anna Elmore.
Hey, Elmore.
Sandra Wiggins.
Wiggins with the wiggle?
Yep.
Yep.
Elizabeth Duty.
What's going on, Duty?
And last but not least, Christina Weller.
Well, thank you, Christina.
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Rachel Heather Lee Lang.
Man, that's a big name, but thank you, Rachel.
It is. It is. So we have an episode out right now on Unsolved, where we're finishing up with part 2 on the Axeman of New Orleans.
It's good.
Yeah. So make sure you jump over and check both of those out. Start with part 1. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
I'm ready.
We're talking about Dustin and Ginger Jefferson. 32-year-old Kerry O'Clair-Jefferson was stabbed to death on September 25th, 2013. Her husband, Dustin, had a motive to kill her, but Kerry's mother-in-law, Ginger Jefferson, was wrapped up in the case as well. So we'll get into all the particulars. Kerry O'Clair-Jefferson graduated from South Tama High School. She attended Marshalltown Community College and had previously worked at the Iowa Veterans Home. Kerry was married to a man named Dustin Jefferson. Their marriage was described as volatile in court documents. At the time of Kerry's murder, the two were living separately. And volatile is never good, right? When you're talking about a marriage.
No, you don't want that in your relationship.
People argue, people have fights.
We argue all the time.
Sure. But I would never say it's volatile, because to me, that is rising to a level of animosity that is really almost untenable.
Yeah, plus, I'm always right. So
That's true. So at some point, I do have to concede
yeah.
to your big brain. It was said that both Dustin and Kerry had criminal records, but his convictions were for more serious crimes. Kerry had charges for drunken driving and marijuana possession from 2005 to 2013. She spent a total of 89 days in jail. So those aren't good, right? Drunk driving, and that's not good at all. Now, marijuana possession, I think people are looking back on that much differently today.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it's legalized in so many places.
Right.
And so was it a crime back then? Well, yeah, it was. We've also talked about how in California, they were locking people away for 20 plus years.
Oh, yeah.
For possession of marijuana, 3 strikes, all that stuff. Dustin was convicted of third-degree burglary in 1995. In 99, he was convicted of going armed with intent.
That's not good.
No, that's not good at all. Then in 2002, he was convicted of assault causing injury to a peace officer. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison for this offense. And that's definitely not good. Anytime you're talking about, injuring a police officer, I'm surprised that he only got 2 years.
Must have been kind of minor.
Like he's not taking shots at him or didn't hit him, with a bullet or something like that. We don't know the particulars, but I agree with you. It must have been fairly minor to get that low of a sentence. In April 2010, Dustin was arrested for domestic abuse assault causing bodily injury. And Kerry was the victim in this case. And a no contact order was issued. Dustin entered a plea bargain and served 7 days in jail.
Kind of a cooling off process, I think.
Well, it is, but okay, that seems light to me. I don't know what the normal type of sentence for this is, but 7 days in jail, yeah, I'm with you. That's almost like hey, just sit in here and cool off type of thing rather than a real punishment. But I also think you're getting a sense of why this relationship was considered volatile. I mean, we're talking about bodily harm here, domestic abuse. In 2011, Dustin was convicted of willful injury, causing bodily injury. He was also cited for assaulting an inmate at the county jail. Dustin suspected that the inmate stole his calling card to use his phone minute.
Well, those are issues that will cause a fight in jail. They'll be taking my calling card.
Well, I think there are a lot of things that cause fights in jail, but I do believe the stealing of property has to be, near the top, because if you think about what inmates have, it's very little. So if you're talking about things that they were able to purchase at the commissary or whatever you call it, cigarettes, which I don't think a lot of places allow you to smoke anymore, but phone minutes. Okay, these are very important things when you don't have a lot.
That's right. And don't eat my ring dings either.
Exactly. In March 2013, Dustin was accused of a parole violation. His parole was revoked in April. So, I think you can easily see, right? This guy had a history of getting in trouble. He had a hard time kind of towing the line because even when he got out on parole, he couldn't kind of stay straight and his parole was revoked. Kerry's mother, Marlene O'Clair, later testified that Kerry and Dustin had an on-again, off-again relationship. And alcohol had a negative influence on the relationship, which was mentally and physically abusive. She said Kerry wanted to divorce Dustin.
I think alcohol can do that. We know that.
It can change people.
It can, and it can make them both verbally and physically abusive.
Well, and her mother saying she wanted to divorce Dustin doesn't seem like a stretch to me, right? She, filed for a restraining order. There were multiple incidents of domestic abuse. You could see why maybe she wanted to get away from him and not be married to him anymore. According to the newspaper, The Courier, she said, when they loved, they loved. When they hated, and then she just left it there.
Yeah, but I can see where she was going, right? I mean, it's just like, why be in a relationship like that, though, right? I mean, when you're together, things are in sync, man, you couldn't love somebody any more than this person, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're just waiting for that bomb to go off, right? Waiting to step on that mine, and all of a sudden, it's the worst of the worst, right? And you can't stand the person, and they can't stand you, and you're thinking, why the hell are we even in this relationship together?
But then maybe it turns around very quickly and can go back and forth. Yeah. Whereas other relationships are much more steady. They don't have maybe the highs, but they definitely don't have the lows.
Right.
Dustin and Kerry's marriage became extremely volatile because a warrant was issued against him for 5 counts of third-degree sexual abuse. The sexual abuse charges involved a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah, so at that point, I think Kerry was probably like, I'm done.
Absolutely done. I think she was thinking about, trying to get out earlier, but this was the final kind of straw. And we talked about the fact that, they were separated. Dustin was living in Tama, Iowa with his cousin Carlos Jefferson and his girlfriend Trudy Mathis, who was also friends with Kerry. Trudy spoke with law enforcement and said that Kerry and Dustin fought from June to August 2013 about his involvement with the girl. In one confrontation, Kerry smashed Dustin's cell phone against a wall because it allegedly contained photos of the girl. Dustin smashed her cell phone in retaliation. So again, that word keeps popping up. This is volatile stuff.
It is.
It's very heated, but can you blame Kerry?
No, not at all.
If, he's showing her his cell phone and there are pictures of a 12-year-old girl. And we don't even know, these could have been nude pictures.
Yeah, inappropriate stuff.
Inappropriate pictures. And I mean, I think that would just have enraged her even more. Court documents state that Kerry called Dustin a pedophile and told Trudy to look at his phone as proof. She called Dustin a sick guy.
Well, if he did what he did, he is a sick guy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The thought of this man, this grown man, having any type of sexual activity with a 12-year-old girl is stomach churning. Nasty, nasty stuff. There was evidence that Kerry might have testified against him in the sexual abuse case. However, on August 24th, 2013, Kerry made a Facebook post about her and Dustin's 9th wedding anniversary. They still had somewhat regular contact with each other, and Kerry often visited him at Carlos Jefferson's house in Tama. So this is somewhat of a strange situation. We detailed out what was called mental and physical abuse,
right,
domestic abuse. You have these charges of inappropriate contact with a 12-year-old girl. And then you have, her saying she wants a divorce, wants out of the relationship, but you also have her keeping in contact, or you have the two,
right, staying
in contact with each other. It's very strange. It's almost like I hate you, but I can't stay away from you, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
that's what it seems like.
I'm going to post a picture about me and you having our 9th anniversary. Yeah, I think he was probably able to do a lot of mental damage.
Yeah, and he could have been a very manipulative guy. Again, we don't know all those details. The one thing I do know is that for some people, when you are really in love, even though a person's not good for you, even though they hurt you, sometimes it's hard to stay away from someone.
It is. It's hard to walk away.
Another problem in the marriage was Dustin's mother, Ginger Jefferson. Ginger had a criminal record for aiding or sponsoring a gathering for marijuana use interference, trespassing, and domestic abuse assault. So she had a rap sheet, of her own. And by all accounts, Ginger and Kerry did not get along well. Kerry's mother, Marlene, testified at Ginger's later trial that it was unusual for Ginger to be at the couple's home because she didn't see them often. Now, is that unusual? I do think there are a lot of wives that don't get along great with their mother-in-laws.
Yeah. It's always been the ongoing joke, right?
Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to see somebody take their baby away from them, however old he is. I mean, that's always been the thinking. I can say my wife gets along great with my mom.
Yeah.
They talk all the time, but I don't think it's true for everyone. Ginger was living in Toledo, Iowa with family until August 2013. She was kicked out for unspecified reasons and was living with other family members at the time of the murder. So I've got to question that. What do you have to do to get kicked out of a family member's home?
Well, I mean, back then, if she was using marijuana, maybe they didn't like that and they've told her to quit using it.
That could be.
Because kids around or something. And
Sure.
She's like, nope, I'm still going to smoke my joints when I want. They might have been, all right, well, you're out of here.
Or she might have had some unsavory characters coming over that they didn't like. There's a lot of different things. When it says unspecified reasons, we're really just kind of left to speculate. Kerry's friend, Stephanie Kyle, told the local paper, The Gazette, that Kerry and Ginger had what she called spats, but they didn't really get physical. It was more verbal. Okay, well, I guess that's good. I mean, it'd be really bad if you're getting physical with, mother-in-law, daughter-in-law. Yeah, but verbal's bad enough.
I would say those verbal fights can be pretty brutal, A lot of nasty things can be said about each other.
There's a part of me that thinks sometimes the verbal can be worse than some of the physical.
Yeah.
Just because, people can really cut you down to your core.
Oh, yeah. And that stuff will stay with you.
Oh, yeah. These are some things that you will never get out of your mind. Now, physical altercations aren't good. Don't get me wrong.
No. But that, like you said, those verbal things, they stick with you. And even after you get back to a normal relationship with that person, those are still stuck in your head.
Yeah, they're always maybe in the back of your mind or maybe in the front as well. Stephanie didn't think Kerry was fearful of Ginger and described their relationship as that normal in-law hatred that some people have. Okay, I get that. I mean, I kind of talked about it. Now, is it normal? No, I don't think so. I think the majority of people get along well with their in-laws and vice versa, but we do know that some people just can't and don't. Shortly before she died, Kerry told Trudy Mathis that Dustin might hurt or kill her because of what she found on his phone. She seemed afraid. But then the following day, she didn't want to talk about it. Kerry spent the night with Dustin at Carlos Jefferson's house on September 24th, 2013. On September 25th, Ginger Jefferson and Dustin's sister, Sahara Martinez, came over to the house. They were drinking together that morning. Okay, a couple of things that are popping out to me. Number one, we're doing some day drinking here. But, really the big one is Kerry telling someone that she believes Dustin might want to hurt or kill her, but then she's spending the night with him.
Yeah, Carlos. Yeah.
That jumped out at me as a little bit odd. Kerry left the house around 11 a.m. According to testimony from a liquor store clerk, Kerry bought a bottle of whiskey at the store between 11 and 11:30 a.m. The clerk already knew Kerry from previous interactions. She said Kerry did not have any visible bruises or injuries on her body, and she said she looked really good that day. So that's kind of setting a time frame.
Yeah.
And then also the state of Kerry or what she looked like at that point in time. Kerry's mother recalled that she stopped by to visit between 11 and 11:30. She stayed for about an hour. Kerry seemed like she was in a good mood and was excited about her job interview the next day for a new CNA position.
So it sounds like everybody's saying she looked good. She seemed to be okay that day.
Yeah, and was in good spirits. After visiting her mother, Kerry returned to Carlos's house. According to Dustin's police statement, he told Kerry that he, Ginger, and Sahara were going out for a drive and asked Kerry if she wanted to come with them. Dustin said, as quoted by State versus Jefferson, "And I'm driving and I'm drunk. So she's already drunk and she's already mad because I'm driving and she knows I got a warrant. So that's her main thing. Well, I'm calling the cops so you don't drive. You got a warrant." I was like, "Well, we're going to go for a drive. You want to go?" She said, "No, I'm not going to go." And I was like, "All right, well, we're going to go for a cruise." And she said, "Well, I'm calling the fucking cops because you're driving." And it's hard for me always to read some of these quotes from people because their grammar is so bad.
Yeah.
I almost can't read it the way it's written.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think we're getting the gist of it, which is she's ticked off. He's drunk.
Yeah.
He wants to drive the car, but he already has a warrant out for his arrest. At some point before 1 p.m., Dustin, Ginger, and Sahara left the house in Sahara's car. Dustin was driving the vehicle. The final hours of Kerry's life were stressful and chaotic. Between 1 and 2:40 p.m., Kerry made several calls to Dustin and several calls to the Meskwaki Nation Police Department. This was the jurisdiction that issued the warrant. Dustin is a member of the Meskwaki Nation, which is a federally recognized tribe in Iowa. Kerry called the police at 1:22 p.m. and spoke to Officer Joe Holes about the outstanding warrant and possible locations where Dustin could be found. She called Dustin's phone 3 times between 1:56 and 2 p.m. All of the calls were brief, the longest one lasting just over a minute. So she followed through on her threat.
She did.
She told Dustin, "If you're going to go out and drive, I'm calling the effing police."
Yeah.
And that's exactly what she did. At 2:15, Kerry called the police again and asked to be connected to Officer Holes. He was unavailable, so she was transferred to Detective Craig Carr. Carr had been trying to get in contact with Kerry and Dustin since July 2013 about the sexual abuse charges. So this is interesting because she gets passed on to a detective who wanted to talk to her anyway.
And he's like, "Now I have you on the phone."
He wants to talk to Dustin too, but about something completely different. At 2:22, Kerry called Dustin again, but the call only lasted 16 seconds. That same minute, she called the police, asked to speak to Detective Carr, was put on hold, and disconnected the call. Kerry called Dustin again at 2:24 p.m. And then at 2:33, she called the police 3 more times. However, at least one of the calls was accidental. The first call was the longest and lasted just under a minute. The administrative assistant at the police department recognized Kerry's voice. It sounded like she was arguing with 2 other women. Kerry shouted that they were going to jail for what they had done. The other 2 voices were also shouting, but the assistant couldn't understand exactly what they were saying.
There's a lot of things going on.
Well, yeah, and I think that's why, I said it was chaotic. It was stressful. She's making a lot of phone calls. She's talking to Dustin multiple times. Now, we don't know exactly at this point what she's saying. My assumption is at some point she told him that she had been in contact with the police. And maybe she even told them that Detective Carr wanted to speak to them about the sexual abuse charges. Don't let allergy season slow you down. Get common allergy meds for as little as $15 with GoodRx. So you and your family, pets included, can stop allergy symptoms before they start. GoodRx is free and easy to use. Just search for your prescription on the website or the app, compare prices, and get a free coupon to show your pharmacist. Save at over 70,000 local pharmacies nationwide, including Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Publix, Kroger, and many more. Check GoodRx before every trip to the pharmacy to save up to 80% on both brand and generic medications. And did you know GoodRx rewards you for saving money too? Join GoodRx Rewards today and earn points every time you use a coupon. Remember, GoodRx is not insurance, but works whether you have insurance or not. And it could be your insurance copay price. I've been using GoodRx for years, and I can't tell you how many times I have saved money even with my insurance. Stop allergies before they start and save big on allergy medications this season with GoodRx. Go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That's goodrx.com/TCATT. You know, once the temps start rising, I realized I was back in the same worn out rotation. Same tank, same shorts, same everything. So I gave my daily uniform an upgrade with Quince. Their pieces are easy, elevated, and somehow make me feel more put together without even trying. Like they're 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30. Luxe swimwear, Italian leather platform sandals, and so much more. The best part, everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I'm getting ready to stock up on shorts for summer from Quince, and I know they're going to be amazing because everything I've ordered has been of the highest quality, and the prices are amazing. Treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/TCAT for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/TCATT to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TCAT. Kerry eventually realized that the assistant was speaking to her and trying to get her attention. She identified herself and apologized for the, quote, ass dial, according to State versus Jefferson.
Good old ass dial.
I think most of us call it a butt dial, but
Yeah.
an ass dial, I guess, would be correct as well.
happens.
At 2:35 p.m., Kerry called again and spoke to Detective Carr. He would later testify that Kerry asked if Dustin had been arrested yet. She told him to go to Carlos Jefferson's house, but warned that Dustin wouldn't be there long. So again, she is following through with what she said she was going to do. She was going to call the police, and now she's asking if they've arrested him yet. She told Detective Carr that she would come to the police department the next day to give more details about the sexual abuse case, but she wouldn't tell the whole story until she was divorced.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. In his statement, Dustin said that he and Ginger returned to Carlos's house after their drive, but Sahara wasn't with them. Sahara later testified that at some point in their drive, Dustin stopped the car so that she could use the bathroom outside. She claimed that Dustin left her behind. An officer saw her walking on the highway that afternoon and took her to get medical treatment for diabetes. So you mentioned it, but there is just so much going on in what really is a very short period of time. You have all these calls made by Kerry. Now we find out that Dustin essentially left Sahara stranded.
You got the police wanting to talk to him about the sexual abuse case.
And my thought is he knows that by now. That's probably been relayed to him, most likely by Kerry. Dustin told the police that he stayed outside Carlos's house and sat down in front of the garage to drink another beer. Ginger went inside to use the bathroom. Kerry stuck her head out and told him the police were coming. So if he didn't know it before he got back, he definitely knows it now at this point. According to Dustin, minutes later, Ginger came outside from the back entrance. Her hands were bloody. She said she hurt Kerry and started running away from the house. Dustin said he was in shock and followed his mother in his car. Not something you probably expect from your mother.
No, I wouldn't think so. Or any family member.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good thing to say. Ginger went to the home of Amber Navarro, who lived a block away from Carlos. Amber was in a relationship with Ginger's nephew, Daniel. So it seems like a lot of these people know each other, in this part of town. They live close to each other. According to Amber, Ginger was upset and intoxicated. She immediately noticed blood on her hands. Her children was home, so she helped Ginger wash the blood off so they wouldn't see it. Per State versus Jefferson, Ginger told Amber that she and Kerry, quote, got into it, and that Kerry accused Ginger and Dustin of sleeping together on a gravel road.
Okay, little mother-son.
Incest.
Yeah.
On a gravel road.
Yeah. Don't know much about that on the gravel road thing,
But you do know about the other?
No.
Yeah, okay. I don't think that
no.
came out right.
No, I'm thinking maybe she met, like, they parked the car on a gravel road.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know about sex on a gravel road, but especially with your mother.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going on with this family.
There is. And it's a lot to keep track in, a lot to digest. Ginger said she stabbed Kerry twice in the neck, and that before the stabbing, they were, quote, playing around with a knife.
Playing around or wrestling around with a knife?
I don't know what playing around with the knife means. And, as we'll see later on in this case, it's possible that they meant Ginger and Kerry, or that Dustin was involved, right? It's a little tough from they to figure out exactly who it was. Ginger said she believed Kerry was dead, and she asked Amber to call her daughter-in-law, Lori Davenport. Both Amber and Lori heard Ginger say, "I stabbed her twice in the neck." All right, not looking good for Ginger.
No.
Amber called the police to report the stabbing. The police arrived at Carlos Jefferson's house at 2:44 p.m. to arrest Dustin on the outstanding warrant. Moments later, Dustin pulled into the driveway next to the police car. He said he needed to check on Kerry because she might be hurt or dead. And the police went in and found Kerry in a pool of blood on the floor with 2 stab wounds to her neck. She was quickly pronounced dead. So, we've gone here from a lot of weird, strange things happening and a lot of chaos and confusion and kind of frantic calls.
Right.
To they go to arrest Dustin on this outstanding warrant, and they find Kerry dead. And Ginger has told multiple people that she stabbed Kerry in the neck.
Just trying to think how messed up this Dustin guy is, right? If it's true that he messed around with a 12-year-old.
And possibly slept with his mother on a gravel road.
It's like, what is going on, man? This guy has no boundaries, no sense of right and wrong.
No morals. This is almost strange, fascinating, hard to take your eyes away from reality show, except for the gravity of it.
Yeah.
The fact that someone ends up dead. We have the allegations of sexual abuse of a 12-year-old girl.
Sickening.
But the other stuff you could see kind of playing out in some reality show about a dysfunctional family. Kerry's blood was found on the door frame of Amber Navarro's house and on Amber's shirt. It's believed that this blood was transferred from Ginger. Now, one thing that I did want to talk about was Amber helping Ginger to wash off the blood stain. I don't know if at that point she had already been told that Ginger had stabbed Kerry in the neck or not. Because obviously from a investigative standpoint, you wouldn't have wanted her to do that.
No, but I also get where she's concerned her kids are going to freak out seeing all this blood on. Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah.
I definitely get that. Investigators found a folding knife in Carlos's backyard, which they determined was the murder weapon. Dustin confirmed it was his knife. Ginger Jefferson was arrested as a material witness on September 25th, 2013. On September 27th, a criminal complaint was filed against Ginger, charging her with first-degree murder. And I don't know how they couldn't charge her, based on the evidence, based on the statements that she made to multiple people, that she stabbed Kerry in the neck.
Yeah, how else could you look at it at this point?
Now, you would think in most murder cases, Dustin would be looked at very heavily. He's the husband. They have a volatile relationship. They've been through a lot. She's maybe, wanting a divorce. But it was said that he wasn't considered a suspect in the murder at that point, but he was in police custody and had been questioned.
Well, police probably had him in custody for the other potential charge.
Ginger's murder trial started on May 19th, 2014. Prosecutor Laura Roan told the jury that Kerry was going to turn Dustin in, and that was why he wanted her killed. The state believed Dustin played a bigger role in the murder, but Ginger was the one who stabbed Kerry. Kerry's blood was found on Ginger's t-shirt, jeans, and shoe. Her blood was also found on Dustin's clothing and shoes. Now, Ginger's defense tried to shift more of the blame to Dustin. And that's a strategy that we often see, right?
Oh, of course.
The defense has to shift the blame somewhere.
You want to stir up reasonable doubt.
Well, and they were facing quite a bit of evidence against them. You know, the blood on her clothing, that's, you know, you're going to have to try to figure that out. The fact that she told two people that she stabbed Kerry in the neck, okay, how are we going to battle that? Amber Navarro was the state's first witness. She testified that Ginger came to her home with blood on her hands and confessed to stabbing Kerry. She also added that Ginger wanted a bus ticket to get out of town.
Okay, doesn't look good for Ginger.
No, I think that's pretty damaging testimony. Navarro said she called Carlos Jefferson to warn him not to let his children into the house after school. Carlos Jefferson testified about his phone conversation with Ginger. According to the Courier, he initially explained that he thought Ginger said he killed her, meaning Dustin. He later said that Ginger told him, I killed her.
I'm sure once that got out there, some people might have thought, well, maybe she meant he killed her.
Well, at trial, he testified, I do believe she said he killed her because that's what I originally thought I heard. So it does sound like he went back and forth, but by the time of the trial, he thought it was he killed her. Kerry's friend, Trudy Mathis, testified that Kerry expressed concern for her safety leading up to her death. She said the marriage was rocky because of beatings and cheating.
Well, that will make any marriage rocky.
Yeah, and I think it backs up, you know, maybe Kerry's desire to want out of the marriage, to want a divorce. Dr. Jonathan Thompson, the medical examiner, testified that one of the stab wounds severed Kerry's jugular vein. The second penetrated her esophagus. Kerry had a contusion around one eye. Witnesses who saw her earlier in the day did not report seeing a black eye, and we kind of detailed this out, which meant the injury occurred when she was fatally attacked. According to the Courier, during closing arguments, Ginger's defense attorney told the jury that while the state provided a very compelling case, it was a case against Dustin. So they're sticking with that. It wasn't Ginger, it was Dustin.
You got the wrong person.
The defense attorney pointed out that Kerry made a phone call at 2:37 p.m. and was found dead at 2:47 p.m. The 10-minute period was unaccounted for, and Dustin was arrested at the scene with blood on his clothes. On May 27, 2014, Ginger Jefferson was found guilty of first-degree murder. Prosecutors filed an aiding and abetting first-degree murder charge against Dustin that same day. Ginger was sentenced to life in prison without parole on July 14th, 2014. She was also ordered to pay $150,000 in restitution to Kerry's estate and $7,500 to the Crime Victim Assistance Program. I don't know if she had that kind of money.
Yeah, I'm guessing she probably didn't. But she's not going anywhere. She's locked up for life.
Oh, she's definitely being held accountable for the murder. I just don't know about this restitution and whether any of that money is ever going to be seen.
Well, she might make, $30
27 cents an hour.
Yeah, maybe $30 a week or a month or something to apply towards it.
Kerry's mother, Marlene O'Clair, gave a victim impact statement per the Gazette. She said, "This senseless tragedy was brought on by anger and alcohol. Was it worth it for two families to fall apart? Not a day goes by that I don't think of her. There is only a future that will never be for Kerry."
Well, she's right. It definitely is very senseless.
And the answer to that question, was it worth it? is no. Obviously, it wasn't worth it to anyone. And I just wonder how many people are sitting in prison right now who, if you ask them and they answered honestly, was it worth it? Or if you could take it back, would you? How many would answer yes to the second one, no to the first one? And I think most people would say, if I could take it back, I would. Now, is that because they're remorseful or just because they
don't like their new digs?
Yeah, they don't want to be in prison. Dustin Jefferson's trial started on December 1st, 2014. This marked the start of what would become a lengthy legal process, but the trial ended the next day. Defense attorney Thomas Gall raised concerns about the racial makeup of the jury pool. As we mentioned, Dustin is a member of the Meskwaki Nation. Defendants are entitled to a jury pool that reflects their community. Native Americans comprised 7.5% of Tama County at that time, but only 2 of the 86 potential jurors identified as Native American. Another issue was that 19 jurors did not show up as required. Thomas Gall said he needed time to research how jurors are summoned, and the court granted the defense's request.
Well, that's a pretty big no-show percentage of jurors.
And I also understand what this defense attorney is trying to do. You know, the makeup of the jury is so crucial in any trial for both the prosecution and the defense. So if there's anything they can do to kind of swing it in their favor, they're going to try to do that.
Pretty important.
Dustin's second trial started on September 21st, 2015. And it was said that he refused a last-minute plea deal before jury selection started. The prosecution offered to let Dustin make an Alford plea for attempted murder and 1 count of third-degree sexual abuse in exchange for a 25-year sentence, or an Alford plea for conspiracy and 4 counts of third-degree sexual abuse for a 50-year sentence. Prosecutor said he would likely serve no more than 17 and a half years for either plea, but Dustin refused both deals.
I always think those are tough situations, right? Because if you really didn't do anything wrong, you don't want to plead, but you're also thinking, man, if they can make it look like I did this, I could be stuck in prison for the rest of my life.
But even if you are guilty and you know you're guilty, do some people look at those sentences, 25 years, 50 years, and think, I don't want to do either of those? I don't even want to do the minimum 17 and a half years. Yeah. I'm going to take my chances. I'm going to roll the dice. And as we've seen in other episodes, sometimes that can be a really bad decision.
Oh, yeah.
Because instead of that maybe 17 and a half years, you end up with life with no parole and you're never getting out. So it's definitely a big gamble, whether you did it or not. But I get your point. If you didn't have anything to do with it, would it be much harder to accept the plea deal? And I would say, yeah. Prosecutor Laura Roan argued that Dustin actively participated in the murder. She was dead within minutes of calling the police to report Dustin's location. Kerry's blood was found on Dustin's clothing and sandals, which indicated that he was inside the home when Kerry was killed, not outside like he claimed in his statement. Additionally, Dustin gave 3 different explanations for what happened that afternoon. Detective Kim Schwartz, one of the first responders, testified that it seemed like Dustin was going to flee the scene in his vehicle when he first got to the house. After she pulled out her taser, he got out of the car. He said, I have to check on my wife. I have to check on Kerry. Schwartz described him as angry, distressed, agitated, and intoxicated.
Not a good mix.
No, but I'm sure he was all of those. But what does the jury make of this testimony? Right? The detective says, it looked like he was about to take off. Then I pulled out my taser to get him out of the car. Then all of a sudden he's saying, hey, I got to check on my wife.
Yeah. Changes his story.
Well, those are 2 very different things. You're either fleeing or you're concerned about your wife and you want to get inside and check on her. Schwartz testified about her conversation with Amber Navarro, According to Navarro, Ginger said she fought with Kerry and a knife got brought up. Ginger told Dustin, just do it. Just do it. Dustin said, I can't. So based on that, Navarro got the impression that Dustin was present during the stabbing.
Nothing like your mom encouraging you to stab somebody in the neck.
And not just somebody, your wife.
Yeah.
You know. Now, we talked about rifts between daughter-in-laws, mother-in-laws, but, you know, how many of them rise to this level where potentially the mother-in-law is cheering her son on to kill his wife? I think that's got to be pretty few and far between. The jury watched a video of Dustin's interview on the day Kerry was killed. He shouted and cursed throughout the video and claimed the Bear Clan was responsible and somebody had threatened Kerry. A detective asked where he heard this, and he answered, a voice.
A voice. Okay.
Now, remember, he's intoxicated. He's all these different things, but you would have to say this would be very strange. Number one, who's the Bear Clan? And number two, what's this voice that you're hearing?
I mean, we all have a voice that we hear sometimes, but you don't hear a voice sometimes?
What does your voice tell you?
That I need a desk.
My voice is normally telling me that you're full of you know what, but I don't know what a jury makes of this. You know, this guy seems to be all over the map.
Yeah.
With what he's saying. And then you have this recorded video where, you know, I haven't seen it, but it sounds like he's coming off a little odd, very strange, kind of.
Well, you said probably intoxicated. And
Dustin said he never talked to Ginger about hurting Kerry. He said that he, Ginger, his sister, Sahara, and Kerry were at Carlos's house. They got into an argument, and Kerry threatened to call the police to turn him in. He took Ginger and Sahara for a drive to cool off. Sahara freaked out, so they dropped her off. So this is his statement, and it doesn't line up with what other people have said. He went on to say that when they returned, his mother went into the house, but he stayed outside to drink a beer. His mom then later came out with blood on her hands and ran off. So he's not putting himself in the house at all.
No, he's doing a pretty good job of saying, I stayed outside. I was drinking a beer.
Now, in his second interview, Dustin said he didn't know why there was blood on his clothing, but suggested it came from his mother. Dustin was shown the suspected murder weapon and confirmed that it was his pocket knife. He said that he often left the knife in the kitchen when he bathed, because that's where I usually put my knife when, I strip down, get out of my skivvies, and take a shower.
You do that too, huh?
I just leave it in the kitchen.
Yeah, me too.
For some reason.
A lot of times I'll go ahead and open it up as well.
And just lay it there
Yeah.
with the blade open.
Exactly.
So, he's saying this, hey, the blood could have come from my mother. And I do get that, because in his version, he's outside, his mother comes outside. Could she, have dripped blood onto his clothing, his sandals? Yeah, you could see where that could happen. Now, I'm not sure why you would just put the knife in the kitchen when you're going to bathe, but hey. The state argued that Dustin provided the knife to his mother. The knife was found in the backyard the day after the murder. Prosecutors believed Dustin put it there. He claimed his mother came outside through the back door, but there was no blood on the back door handle, despite the fact that Ginger's hands were bloody.
Well, that's a potential issue, right?
It could be. Now, could you also maybe open a door, depending on what kind it was, with your elbow? You could, but would somebody have the thought to do that? And why would it matter? Even the smallest step forward can make a big difference in your financial future. When you open a Chime checking account, you're one step closer to a better financial future with no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Making progress has never been easier. I think we've all been in that position where we've had an overdraft. Well, with Chime, you can overdraft up to $200 with no fees. That's amazing. And they have over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. Make progress towards a better financial future with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/TCAT. That's chime.com/TCATT. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs. MyPay eligibility requirements apply. Credit limits range from $20 to $500. $2 fee applies to get funds instantly. Crime checking account required. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details. True Crime All the Time is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know, folks, therapy can feel like a big investment, but let's think about the state of your mind. It's just as important as your physical health. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, which adds up really fast. But with BetterHelp Online Therapy, you can save, on average, up to 50% per session. With BetterHelp, you pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, saving you big on cost and time. And you get quality care at a price that makes sense and can help you with anything from anxiety to everyday stress. Your mental health is worth it, and now it's within reach. I've used the BetterHelp service for years. And I love the fact that, I can connect with a therapist in a comfortable spot in my home on my laptop. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/TCAT today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/TCATT. Darwin Chapman, the former director of the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, testified that there were no prints of value on Dustin's knife. He analyzed the bloody footprint at the crime scene and could not rule out shoes owned by Dustin and Ginger. However, the tread design and distribution of blood were similar to a left shoe owned by Kerry. The prosecution called on bloodstain pattern analyst Michael Halverson, who concluded that Kerry bled in 2 places, on a mattress in a bedroom. Large drops of blood suggested she went through a doorway and stood over laundry baskets, which had blood on them. She then went to the room where her body was found. So this is kind of Dexter type stuff here.
It really is.
Blood pattern, analysis. It's fascinating stuff. And it's one of the reasons I think why I did like that show so much. Yes, he was a killer, but they also showed a lot of the blood analysis type stuff. And to me, that was always very fascinating. Even in documentaries, I like that, where they go through and can tell you that the blow was struck from this direction. The person then did this and they fell down here. Even if they ended up somewhere else, just based on the blood spatter and the droplets and how the droplets are shaped and all of that stuff.
Remember watching the stairs?
The staircase.
The staircase.
Yeah, that was one that I was just thinking about, actually.
Yeah, I remember hearing a lot of that during that show.
And even in making a murderer, in that second season, that famous attorney, she was doing a lot of blood type analysis about putting the body in that vehicle, and they kept putting fake blood on like a dummy and then smacking it into the vehicle, just trying to figure out what it should look like if it happened that way. The blood found on the back of Dustin's shirt was consistent with a transfer stain. His sandals had spatter stains on top, and there was a drop of blood on the bottom of one sandal. Now, according to the expert, the spatter stains could be caused by several things, like the impact from beating someone or shooting them, or expiration of blood from coughing, sneezing, or a bloody nose. The expert also referenced satellite spatter from blood dripping onto the floor and causing small stains. The expert said it was possible that the blood on Dustin's clothing was solely transferred by Ginger. Dustin had less blood on his clothing than his mother. Halverson also confirmed that Kerry had blood on the bottom of her shoes. He said the only evidence inconsistent with the theory that Ginger stabbed Kerry and ran out of the house was a drop of blood on the sole of Dustin's sandal. He said it was possible Dustin stepped on a drop of blood.
Putting him in the house.
Putting him in the house, because then they went on to say there was no blood outside the house on the driveway or the sidewalk where Ginger stood, meaning it had to have come from inside the house. So we talked about the fact that her hands were bloody, but it sounds like at least on the driveway and the sidewalk, none of it fell off her hands or they would have found blood. He said no blood was found on the bottom of Ginger's shoes and that Ginger was not covered in blood. She had small spots of blood on her. So a lot of blood evidence in this case, for sure. And it's a lot for the jury to take in. The state once again brought up Kerry's bruises and her black eye. They noted that Ginger was 25 years older than Kerry and 80 pounds lighter. She would have had a hard time overpowering her. The state argued that Dustin held her down as she was stabbed. Now, I get that, 80 pounds is quite a difference when you're talking about trying to overpower somebody. But if you're just stabbing somebody in the neck twice, I don't know that the 80-pound difference necessarily comes into play.
No, I think if you get that first stab in, it's probably going to incapacitate the victim.
Well, and you could stab somebody from behind. They don't see it coming, and therefore there's no fight to be put up. And then to your point, once that first stab is made, and we already said it, but the ME said that it severed her jugular. How much of a fight are you going to be able to put up after that? We don't know. Maybe not much. Seemingly in support of this theory, Kerry's mother testified that Kerry and Ginger had gotten into a physical altercation where Kerry was holding Ginger down and Dustin had to pull her off Ginger. And again, that goes back to the 80-pound weight difference, but I don't know in this scenario that there had to have been a physical struggle prior to the fatal stabbing. The final witness was Lori Davenport, who, according to the Courier, testified that Amber Navarro called her and said, Kerry might be dead. Ginger got on the phone and said, I stabbed Kerry twice in the neck. In her closing statement, prosecutor Laura Roan told the jury that Kerry was killed in an ambush and that Ginger would not have killed her without Dustin's encouragement. She noted that roughly equivalent amounts of blood were found on Dustin and Ginger. The most likely scenario was that Dustin beat Kerry and held her down while Ginger stabbed her. So, let's analyze that for a minute. If they did have about the same amount of blood on them, meaning Ginger and Dustin, does it then not make some sense that they were in the room pretty close together?
I would say, yeah.
I would say yes, too. And then I think you have to take into account, this black eye, this beating that seemed to have occurred. Why would that happen? There'd be no need to do that if you're just sneaking up on somebody and stabbing them in the neck, I wouldn't think. But if the scenario went down as the prosecutor said, okay, Dustin hits Kerry, he's then able to hold her down, Ginger swoops in and stabs her twice in the neck. Now, ultimately, as it always is, it's going to be up to the jury to decide what makes the most sense and whether or not the evidence is compelling enough to convict Dustin.
There's a lot of information there.
There is a lot of information there. And, I do think in some of these types of cases, not real easy for the jury. They've got a lot to wade through. They have a lot of questions to answer. Defense attorney Thomas Gall said that Dustin was reluctant to rat out his mother, but he knew that was what he needed to do. He argued that none of the evidence conflicted with the theory that one person attacked Kerry. Although there was a height and age difference, Kerry had alcohol, opiates, and THC in her system, which could explain why she didn't fight off Ginger. So they really are set on the fact that there had to have been a fight. And obviously there was a fight. She had a black eye.
She did.
So maybe that's why they're factoring in this 80-pound weight difference and saying, is it more likely that Ginger punched Kerry in the eye and then was able to stab her in the neck? Or is it more likely that Dustin did and held her down?
Well, I mean, obviously you can make a claim either way, but I think I lean with him assisting.
I mean, is it possible for someone who weighs 80 pounds lighter to punch you in the face and then stab you in the neck? Sure.
Yeah.
It is. But I think the prosecution is saying, does that make sense? Would that be the most likely way that it went down?
Well, look, we know in these cases, anything's possible.
And I think for me, that's why I've always had, this kind of real struggle with reasonable doubt. When you say anything is possible, that opens up a lot of room for reasonable doubt. Now, in this case, not anything is possible. It's not possible that you murdered Kerry.
No.
Or that I murdered Kerry.
I don't know where you were at.
Now, anything is possible with the people who were there, though. And I think that's what you were getting at.
Absolutely.
The jury started deliberating on September 29th, 2015. But on October 2nd, they determined they couldn't reach a unanimous decision. So a mistrial was declared. And that actually doesn't shock me all that much. A lot of evidence, a lot of pretty scientific blood evidence, but two competing theories. And it sounds like not everyone could agree on one or the other. The jury foreman was the one who refused to find Dustin guilty. He spoke with the press after he was discharged and said that Dustin had motive, opportunity, and intent, but the jury got severely hung up on specific actions. He felt like the prosecution did not fully explain what exactly Dustin did that day. And I think that's always a tough one because you and I have covered so many trials where the prosecution can lay a lot of things out, but they very often don't have an answer for every single thing. And for some jury members, that's a problem.
I think there's no way the prosecution can know everything because obviously they're not there.
No, they're relying on evidence. They're relying on witness statements and things like that. But, those things can only tell so much of the story. And if you have a jury member who wants everything laid out in perfect detail, I think sometimes that's very hard to do. On December 25th, 2015, the Iowa Court of Appeals upheld Ginger's murder conviction. She argued ineffective counsel because her lawyer failed to object to an audio recording from her interrogation. Part of the recording was a discussion on a previous fight between Ginger and Kerry and Ginger's dislike of Kerry because she was a white American. There was a reference to the potential motive that Ginger wanted to prevent Kerry from getting Dustin's money from the Meskwaki settlement if he was convicted. Dustin's third trial started on February 5th, 2016. So they weren't giving up. The mistrial wasn't going to stop the prosecution from going after him. Most of the testimony was similar to his second trial. This time, his sister, Sahara Martinez, was called as a witness. She confirmed that she and Ginger visited Dustin on the day of the murder and they drank together. She was left behind by Dustin when they went out for a drive, so she was not present during the murder.
She can't really add much of anything.
No, I think she was a witness who wasn't there before, but what, did she really add? Doesn't sound like much. I think the key here is that the majority of the testimony was the same. On February 9th, 2016, Dustin Jefferson was convicted of aiding and abetting first-degree murder. And on May 5th, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Those 17 and a half years looking pretty good at that point.
Well, and that's what we talked about. When you roll the dice, you are really taking a big chance. I mean, nobody wants to do 17 and a half years. But when you find out that you've been sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, you'd probably do anything to get those 17 and a half years. But it's too late. But the other thing, that I draw from this is that the testimony was similar. So the only thing that really was all that different was the jury.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's the one thing about our legal system that to me is pretty intriguing, right? The jury has such power. And, depending on the makeup of the jury, depending on, how they view the science, how they view the witness statements and all of that, different juries can come to different conclusions. Now, we'll go back and say there was only one holdout on the previous jury, which means that everybody but one person was ready to convict Dustin.
Yeah, it was gonna happen eventually, I think.
Well, it did.
Well, it did. I mean, yeah.
They just needed one extra person, and this time everybody was unanimous. According to the Courier, Dustin spoke to Kerry's family and said, "I want to say to you guys, I'm sorry. If I had known my mom had this plan, I would have stopped her." He said that he told Kerry he was okay with the divorce, but she refused. She wouldn't leave me. And I was glad for that because I love her. I always did and I always will. I just want you to know deep down inside, I'm not the monster that you think I am.
I don't know.
I don't either. But it's very clear that he's maintaining his innocence and he's putting the entire thing on his mother. He didn't tell her to do it. He didn't want her to do it. She acted of her own accord. So he's sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, but Dustin still had to face the sexual abuse charges.
Now he's got to face the other monstrous charge.
Yeah, no doubt. On February 1st, 2018, Dustin pleaded guilty to assault with intent to commit sexual abuse, which is an aggravated misdemeanor. He was sentenced to time served. So I don't know how well that went over with the victim or the victim's family. The state said that they felt like having Dustin plead to a lesser charge was the best resolution to the case because he had already received a life sentence.
But does that give the victim the justice that she needed?
Yeah, that I don't know. I understand it from the standpoint that he's not going to do any more time than he already has, but was the victim and the victim's family consulted? And how did they feel about that? Because the victim, who was now 19 years old, said that she was never the same after she was abused by Dustin. Per the Gazette, the girl she once was died the minute I first started talking to him. It affected me so badly that I was afraid of my own dad and my uncles. I fell into a deep depression and I started cutting a lot more. And that is very sad. Now, it's very sad what happened to Kerry.
Sure.
But also very sad what happened to this young girl who was 12 at the time. She's 19 when she's talking to the paper. And you really get a sense of what Dustin's actions,
how they impacted her?
Yeah, how they impacted her. And none of it was good. It couldn't be good. Almost 5 years later, Dustin's case was finally resolved. His appeal to the Iowa Court of Appeals was denied on September 12, 2018. So I wish we knew more about how the victim felt about the resolution and how her family felt about it. I didn't see it, or I would have put it in, but I think I would be pretty upset, as a dad.
Yeah.
I understand he's never getting out. He's not going to hurt anyone else. But did he really receive something punitive for what he did to my daughter? And I would say the answer is no. Time already served. It's nothing. But no matter what he got, it wasn't going to add on to his time. But would it have made the family feel better? And I think the prosecution, and maybe they did, and we just don't know, but I think you have to take the victim and the victim's family's wishes into account.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah, for sure.
Now, we know they can't always do exactly what the family wants, or they don't always do what the family wants, but hopefully they were at least involved in the process in some way. But I don't know that for sure.
Like that movie on Lawful Citizen.
Yes. And that caused him to do some very bad things.
Yes, it did.
But it is an excellent movie.
It is.
The murder of Kerry O'Clair-Jefferson is an example of an abusive marriage mixed with a toxic family dynamic.
That's saying that lightly.
Yeah, there's no doubt that marriage was abusive and, a toxic family dynamic. When your mother-in-law kills you and it appears that she was aided by your husband in some form or fashion, I think toxic's an understatement at that point. Kerry was killed because she decided to do the right thing and help the police arrest her husband. After they were arrested, Dustin placed all the blame on his mother, but prosecutors believe that he participated in the murder. Ginger seemed less willing to blame her son, but admitted to stabbing Kerry. So unless a court changes his sentence and grants him parole, Dustin will no longer be able to abuse any more women or girls. And that's a good thing because, what he did just on that part, the abuse of this 12-year-old girl was horrible.
And that's one we know about.
Yeah. We don't know what else is out there. We also know that he was, allegedly abusive to Kerry.
And allegedly sleeping with his mom.
On a gravel road.
Yeah. Let that sink in, but not too far.
Well, I don't know why I'm so hung up on the gravel road, almost more than the incest for some reason. The gravel road is stuck in my head. Who has sex on a gravel road?
I think they mean parked on a gravel road.
Well, why wouldn't they say that?
Well, I don't know, but I'm just saying, I don't think it was actually on the gravel road.
Hey, with this family, I'm not putting anything past them.
That's true. That's true.
Because you would have to say at the end of the day, this was one messed up family. At the very least, Ginger and Dustin.
Yeah, I just think it's a weird dynamic. I mean, day drinking with your mom and then going out for a drunk driving cruise with your mom and your sister. I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are listening saying, well, that's not what my family does.
And that's a good thing.
It is a good thing because I don't think it's healthy at all. And then there's that gravel road, that I'll be thinking about for some time, trying to figure out what's going on there. But that's it for our episode on Dustin and Ginger Jefferson. I don't think there's any doubt that Ginger stabbed and killed Kerry. The jury found Dustin guilty as well. I just wish we knew exactly what happened. Obviously, he was convicted, but he didn't fess up to the crime, so it was never laid out in detail exactly what happened. We have the prosecution's theory that he hit Kerry and then held her down while Ginger stabbed her, but he's never confessed to that.
Yeah.
But we got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Gibby. This is Heather. I'm a longtime listener, and I just wanted to let you know that when you guys were doing the Carla Hughes episode, I think it was, you were talking about the work husband, work wife thing, and I was really disappointed because I was really hoping that you guys would let on which of you, Mike or Gibby, is the work wife and which one's the work husband or vice versa. I kind of figured Mike was the work wife because he hosts the dinner and Gibby just comes and eats it every single time you record. Anyways, I hope you'll let us know which one it is. Thanks so much.
You're laughing as the voicemail is being played.
Yeah, I know you're not laughing.
Well, I'm not gonna to cop to that, but I almost feel like I'm both.
Yeah.
The work husband and the work wife, because I do all the work.
You do.
And
you
so, I provide the meals, I do the editing, the writing. I mean, come on now. But if I had to pick one or the other, I would say I am the work wife.
Yeah.
Because I think more times than not, wives pull more than their share. And so, I'll take that. And you're sitting on the damn couch with your hands in your pants, drinking a beer.
And the problem is?
The problem is you don't think there's a problem. That was a funny voicemail, though. I got a kick out of it.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Madison from Perrysburg, Ohio. I've been a Patreon member for about a year. and I've listened on and off for about 4-ish years, maybe, I think. I've been listening pretty regularly ever since I got to my new job about a year ago. I guess it's not so new anymore. I listen to it 8 to 12 hours a day, depending on the length of my shift. Finished all of TCAT, caught up. Currently listening to Unsolved and the Patreon episodes as well, which I'm just now starting to listen to, even though I've been a member for a year. I'm trying really hard to get my fiance to listen with me, but for some reason he refuses. So I need your help to get my fiance, Caleb, to listen with me. He told me if I do this, because he doesn't think I will, because I hate being on phones and phone calls, that he'll listen to the episode that the voicemail is on. So I'm going to eventually listen to this episode whenever it gets aired, and then when I hear my voicemail at the end, I'm then going to be playing it in the car with him on the way to and from work. Hopefully it's a true crime all the time episode and not an Unsolved episode, though, because I cannot imagine I'll actually get him to listen to the podcast regularly with me if it's Unsolved, because that, I think, would just annoy him. I've listened to so many podcasts of his that he asked me to try, but he refuses to listen to mine. So I think I need your help a little bit, Mike and Gibby. All right. Well, stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Well, heck, that's easy. Caleb, listen to this episode. And we put this on every episode out there.
Put this voicemail on every one, all the way back. So I will say this. First of all, for somebody who says they don't like talking on the phone, she was very eloquent.
She was.
Left a very nice voicemail. And I would echo your sentiments. Caleb, get your shit together. Yeah. Listen to this podcast. Listen to this episode at least.
At least. That's
the least you can do.
And thanks for being Team Gibby.
Yeah. Oh, before you even listen, you're being recruited. We had a couple of things in the mailbag. They were all from Mary Beth Long. She's a great friend of the podcast, longtime friend. She sent us each a huge box of holiday goodies. I mean, they were filled with essentially every candy ever made. Gibbs, there was games in there, trivia, socks, all kinds of stuff. They're basically like some personally curated boxes that you'd get from one of those subscription places.
She does an amazing job.
Well, she curated them to what she knows we like, which is just amazing. So thank you, Mary Beth. We appreciate it very much. Awesome. But that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
It was over 30 years ago that Clifford Olson first called me. Secret phone calls from Canada's most notorious serial killer.
I knew I was killing the children, but I couldn't stop myself.
Now it's time to unearth the tapes, because I believe there are still answers to be found. I'm Arlene Bynum from CBC's Uncover, Calls from a Killer. Available now.